You can be seated. In honor of Jeff, we are here right on time, 15 minutes late as we begin. So I just wanted to ask us to, we wanted to start with a song that, a melody that many of us here at PSJC, we wanted to start with a melody that many of us here at PSJC every month at Hallel. Some of you might know it from a different place. And so I'll just let you listen now. Stephanie?
If my words did glow with the gold of sunshine, and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as it were your own? It's a hand-me-down. The thoughts are broken. Perhaps they're better left unsung. I don't know. Don't really care. Let there be songs to fill the air. Ripple in still water when there is no pebble toss, nor wind to blow. Reach out your hand. If your cup be empty, if your cup is full, may it be again, let it be known. There is a fountain that was not made by the hands of men. There is a road, no simple highway between the dawn and the dark of night. And if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. Ripple in still water when there is no pebble toss, no wind to blow. You choose to lead, must follow. But if you fall alone. If you should stand, then who's to guide you? If I knew the way, I would take you home. La da da da, la da da da, la da da, la da da da, la da
So I know that Ripple, sung by the Grateful Dead, is not a conventional song at a funeral, but Rabbi Jeffrey Marker was far from a conventional man. For Jeff was a man who always, as we might say, marched to the beat of his own drum. He was open to rules, I understand, but only those that made sense to him. I've always appreciated that about him. When he saw something that needed change, Jeff was the first to speak out. And he did so without fear. be it for peace in a world of war, for the inclusion of women rabbis at JTS, for which I'm particularly grateful. And Jeff was a man who refused to be counted in a minyan that didn't count women. It's like he was one of the men who made it happen. His deep commitment to justice as a rabbi for human rights or a strong voice for racial justice in our nation, it was all just a given, a part of who he was. With firmness, but always with kindness, Jeff stood up for what he knew was right, and he brought ripples to still waters, ripples of influence far beyond his own actions. In his own way, I really believe Jeff truly did help to change our world. And to our dear friend Jeff, to paraphrase this song you love so much, whose melody for me will always be that first paragraph of Hallel. That's what you taught me. And which Rena reported you singing nonstop in recent days. You had to go. And as they said, no one may follow that path that you're taking. It is for your steps alone. But know, dear friend, that we are here for Livaya. We are here to escort you on this next step of your journey. And we're doing so beginning in this city of your birth and from this sacred space where you served as rabbi in the late 1980s and then remained an important presence in the community for the rest of your life. It was only on Tuesday at Zoom on Rosh Chodesh Adar, Jeff and I and Charlie Yurch, we sang a beautiful, if completely off-key, Hallel that could have rocked your world, right? It was great. And then on Friday, as recently as Friday night, he joined us via Zoom for Kabbalat Shabbat, noshing a little bit during the service, but not napping, so it was an accomplishment, right? He's great. I love Jeff. Jeff is actually the person I just have to say, he was the person who actually knew how to use Zoom. He was present, and there wasn't a service where Jeff's voice didn't come in some form. I loved it. I loved it. And your humor, good and bad, your courageous creativity, your thoughtful teaching, your deep and abiding kindness will always remain a part of this space and the community that you've helped to create. From here, we escort you on this journey. When you walked in, there were two sheets. One of them has a number of small songs that we'll be going through throughout this service. If you're on Zoom, the words to these songs are in the chat. Mi ha'ish hechafetz chaim, ohev yamim lirot tov. Who is the one who desires life? Who is the one who saw the good, who celebrated life? This was Jeff Marker, a man who found goodness and laughter and joy even in the midst of moments of real challenge, who could laugh and pun better or at least more often than anyone I knew, who got tremendous joy sharing story upon story upon story with details and sidebars enough to make you feel like you were there with him, driving a cab in New York City in the 70s while trying to get into rabbinical school, or sitting at a Freedom Seder in the street with Arthur Waskow, attending an Ohala conference in Denver, sitting in a schwitz at a Jewish men's retreat, something I will not ever get to do, but Jeff made me feel like I was there. It's true. I think I'm channeling him a little bit at this moment. Or causing trouble in rabbinical school. There were many, many versions of that story. But who is the one who loved days and saw good in them? Jeff, who, as Rena told me, was so joyful and so friendly to everyone he encountered that her 9-year-old self thought, oh my gosh, my dad knows so many people. He says hello to everyone. He must know the entire neighborhood. And it was only years later that she discovered that he didn't, in fact, know all these people. He didn't know every person in Kensington. Jeff was just the kind of guy who really did just say hello to everyone, friend and stranger alike, and he made you comfortable. Jeff's joy was palpable in his passion for baseball, for maps, for trains, for theater, even for his dogs, I would say, but especially when he was being silly with Rena or just around us, he was joyful. Jeff was a man who faced the greatest challenges of life, including this final illness, with humility and honesty, definitely desiring more days, but filling the ones that he had with connection and kindness. Nitzor leshoncha mera usfatecha medaber mirma. Guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking falsehood. This too was Jeff Marker. Jeff told it how it is, in a simple, kind, and straightforward way. Even when he wanted to push me to try something extra creative that I wasn't quite ready for, he pushed. He made it clear that this would be a really good addition, but he did it in a way that I always felt like I had an option, and I actually never felt bad about myself, even when I didn't go his way. Usually I did in the end, but he had a basic kindness about him. His sense of chesed was clear to every person he encountered. Sur me'ra v'yaseh tov, turn from evil and do good. This was Rabbi Jeff Marker. More than avoiding evil, Jeff pursued the good, be it through his passion for teaching Hasidut, Jewish texts, Jewish history, or through his courageous creativity, bringing a taste of renewal to an egalitarian conservative synagogue in Brooklyn, something I have actually been quite grateful for. And in keeping with Jeff's minhag, I know that we will be dancing across the sea on the 7th day of Pesach again this year. With or without his Sea of Reeds map. I'm not sure if we can get that. Rabbi Jeff Marker did great good in this world. He did great good through his work as a hospice chaplain, walking those final steps for others with deep compassion and care. In a world of physical and emotional distance, Jeff found a way to build connections with people near and far, and he held on to the relationships that he built 50 and more years later. It's telling that today, this funeral is being led by rabbis and cantors from not one, but 4 different communities that make up only part of Jeff and Paula's Jewish community. Park Slope Jewish Center, Flatbush Jewish Center, Kolot Chayenu, and Romamu Brooklyn. It is a testimony to your desire to create community beyond borders, that we and so many others are here today, and that we actually, the number of people who would like to be standing in my shoes at this moment, sharing their thoughts, is beyond anything I've ever seen, actually. Vake shalom verodfehu. Seek peace. I would add seek justice and pursue it. This, I think, was the mission of Jeff's life. An activist at heart, Jeff was involved in TRUA, Rabbis for Human Rights, New Jewish Agenda, so many organizations dedicated to creating a more just society. And he didn't only talk the talk, Jeff walked the walk. He showed up as long as he could, and when he couldn't show up in person, he showed up on Zoom. And then when he wasn't even able to do that, believe me, he was writing every kind of text and message that you could possibly send out into the world. As I learned from Rabbi Rob Scheinberg, this wasn't something he just picked up in Brooklyn. Jeff knew early on how to work with others to address communal needs. In his role as rabbi at Hoboken Synagogue in the early 80s, Jeff joined with Christian clergy to create a safe space for people displaced by arson fires in the city. The clergy members took turns sleeping in the makeshift shelter at a church to ensure that no one would shut it down. This was what Jeff did. It was a given. He was involved with dialogue, right? Real person to person, I, thou, heartfelt and soul connecting communication across difference. It was critical to who he was as a human being. And even before ordination, Jeff stood up when no one else could. As I understand it, when it was time for his ordination from JTS, a number of his classmates were planning to wear this Ordain Women Now button, which I know that he still has. And when the day came, only Jeff found the courage and the chutzpah to wear that pin to his ordination. He may not get credit for it, but Jeff's courage, time and time again, helped set the conservative movement in that time, and I believe the world in a better direction. May we all know his courage to truly pursue peace and justice, even if at times we feel like we're walking alone. As David and Bill told me, Jeff, over the years, sort of became a respected elder in many ways. Other rabbis actually, and I actually believe this, other rabbis understood to be a humble, respected, trailblazing, thoughtful person, someone to turn to when needed, someone who would turn to you with chesed. And I actually couldn't agree more. As a person who literally sat across from him for years and sort of watched to see when he was going to nod, when he was going to correct me, when he was going to, I didn't know. But I always knew that Jeff knew what he was doing, and he would always treat me with respect. And I, as a rabbi who came after him in this synagogue, I'm always grateful for that. That Jeff's speaking to us from. So we're just going to mute everybody who's on Zoom. There you go. That's all right. I can't tell you the number of times I've muted Jeff, so it's okay. It's very appropriate. It's all good. It's all good. Jeff was he was a rabbi and a teacher to many, myself included. But above all, he was a father, a partner, a brother. And it is you, Paula, Rena, and Alicette, Bill and David, Nan and Mary, as well as Jeff, whom we are here for on this terribly sad day. You know, the book of Psalms assures us, Karov Adonai lenishberei lev, v'dakei ruach Yoshia. God is with the brokenhearted. And we feel God's presence today as we sit with broken hearts, as we sit in the presence of broken hearts. We sit with you, Paula, you who built a life with Jeff for these 48 years. Is that right? Creating family and community for yourselves in Los Angeles, in Washington, D.C., in Brooklyn, even on Zoom in recent years. We sit with Rena and Alicette as well, about whose well-being Jeff worried, as all parents do, and to which he was deeply dedicated since the day each of you entered his life. We talked about you so often, and if you ever wonder, please know that your dad's love for you was always massive and complete and unconditional. We sit with Jeff's brothers, Bill and David, as well as Nan and Mary, who stayed close throughout their lives, despite any physical distance. And it's not a small accomplishment for siblings, so it's something to hold. And we sit with many other family members and dear friends, gathered in this space on Zoom and across the globe, people whose hearts are focused on Jeff today. And though right now his untimely death is primary in our minds, it's appropriate that this family and this community that Jeff created for himself has already begun to tell stories, to show pictures, to recall memory upon memory of Jeff. Soon, even now, we can begin to laugh as well as to cry, to remember that even as we mourn his death, it is the joyful, courageous, and deeply menschlich way that Jeff lived his life that will remain with us. And to hear a little of that life, I want to invite his brothers, Bill and David, forward, in whatever order you feel comfortable.
So, Rabbi, thank you very much for those kind words. Spot on. You actually stole some of my prepared remarks. But you also reminded me about the pursuing justice. Our oldest child's bar mitzvah had tzedek tarduf in his Torah portion. And that has always been kind of a guiding light for Jeff and our whole family, that you can't sit and wait. Your job is to pursue justice. So Jeff was my oldest brother, almost 9 years older than me. So as a result, many of my remembrances are of really like an older relative rather than someone I lived many years with. Some of my earliest memories of Jeff are when we took a family car trip from Maryland to California and back, 5 weeks in an Oldsmobile sedan for my two parents and children 14, 11, and 5. So what is so unusual, other than my parents agreeing to do that, is that Jeff planned the entire trip. He identified the national parks and the cities that we would go to. Given Jeff's love of trains, this included stopping in Durango, Colorado to visit a train museum and take a ride on a train to Silverton. When we were in California, he called someone he had read about in a magazine and got him to invite us to come to his house and see his model railroad set up in the basement at 14 years old. Apparently, his love of trains started early. There is a story that when he was living in Brooklyn, Jeff disappeared one day. My parents found that he had ridden his tricycle, a couple of blocks away, I believe across Church Avenue, to where he could watch the subways coming out of the ground, and just spent hours sitting there watching. When Jeff left to go to college at Carnegie Mellon, it was Carnegie Tech at that point, Pittsburgh was in the process of eliminating all or many of its streetcars. And Jeff tried to ride all of them before that would happen. Between that and suddenly deciding to start keeping kosher, he focused on things other than school, lasting only 1 year at Carnegie. He would frequently take Bill and or me to chase steam engines. I can remember going down a small road to catch sight of a train at a hilltop or around a curve where the smoke would be most dramatic, and then dashing into the back seat and racing off so that you could get to the next spot where you could see the train. He was also a huge baseball fan. There are home movies of Jeff and Bill when they lived here in Brooklyn, going down to, I think, City Hall. Bill will tell more about this story after the Dodgers won the 1955 World Series. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one Halloween, Rena dressed up in that baseball outfit. Is that, I think. So over the years, Jeff rooted for the Washington Nationals and then the Senators. Then after they both left town, he supported the Baltimore Orioles. And then after moving back to Brooklyn, he became a Mets fan. No matter what year it was, he rooted against for everyone who could beat the Yankees. He also loved Washington's football team, and then after he became here, the Jets, because how could he root for the Giants? So the rabbi just mentioned that he drove a cab in New York City, and I think the best way to describe that period of his life is Harry Chapin's, taking tips and getting stoned. That was my older brother studying to try and get into the JTS. He graduated from JTS, and our mother was particularly thankful since her father had endowed a fund at JTS. She was particularly proud of a photo of her dad and leaders of the seminary, Finkelstein, and I don't know who all the other people were in it, that she would share with everyone, especially when Jeff was there. Jeff was most of all a child of the 60s, always questioning authority. A little bit more about the story that Rabbi Carter alluded to. He almost got kicked out at the end rather than graduating. During his senior year, the faculty had, as I remember, had finally agreed to admit women, and then they backtracked and said, it's not a final decision. Jeff was very upset, and his own way, in print, called the leadership of the JTS chicken shit. He had a way with words. They did decide to let him graduate, I think, basically to be done with him. And at graduation, yes, he not only did he wear a big white button that said OWN in big letters and then Ordained Women Now, but gave them to us to wear in the audience as well when he was there. But he walked across the stage with his button on. A few years earlier, Jeff had also gotten arrested at a sit-in at the New York City Jewish Federation over lack of how they were distributing funds to the poor, or not distributing funds to the poor. I don't remember the details. The interesting thing is that same weekend, Bill and his friends from the University of Pennsylvania came down to DC to protest treatment of Soviet Jews and get arrested, chaining themselves to the Soviet embassy. So both my brothers on the same weekend get arrested. Right, he did that before you as well. My dad was a lawyer for the federal government. My parents were terribly embarrassed that their children would be arrested, but at the same time, very, very proud of their son's activism for good causes. He even arranged in advance to come help bail Bill and his friends out. Interesting role models for me at that time in my life. All of you know Jeff with a beard, right? You may not know there was one time he did shave it off. As part of the 1968 presidential campaign, he was one of many young volunteers in the McCarthy campaign who came clean for Gene so that they could go clean-shaven door knocking and try and convince people to support him. But that was the last time he was clean-shaven. When he is clean-shaven, he looks just like my dad and just like I did. Our graduation pictures from like high school are phenomenally similar. Before Jeff came to Park Slope, he was a Hillel rabbi at Penn State and then the rabbi in Hoboken. The stories on RobNet have been fascinating. I was going to read the rabbi just read about the work he did with the homeless there. Neither Bill nor I had any recollection of this. He didn't tell stories about himself. He told stories about other people. Jeff had two long-term loves in his life. He loved his family very much. Married to Paula for 46 years. They saw each other through life's highs and lows, sharing a common worldview. And they were especially loving to share Jewish holidays with their many friends. I did not know when I wrote this yesterday that we were going to be starting with Ripple, but I was going to say that for even longer than he's known Paula, Jeff has loved the Grateful Dead. He saw an uncountable number of shows, and I believe he already has tickets for a concert of Dead and Company coming to New York later this year. In Jeff's honor, I'm wearing a Jerry Garcia tie today. I loved Jeff my whole life. He made crazy decisions. He could be stubborn, but there was never a doubt that he cared deeply for what he believed in and would do anything to help those who needed his assistance. He'll be missed by many, many people.
David, the organized one, had a nice written down speech. I've barely got some notes, and I can't read my handwriting even when I'm not crying. So, but I understand if I ramble a bit or something, it might be reminiscent of Jeff. I think that's what I heard. So, but I am Jeff's older brother. People of our age may remember, but according to the book of our youth, my brother was an only child until I was born. So at which time I became his brother. But I'm not actually his, the whole family. It's not just the three brothers, and it is, I think, it is a blessing that we stayed pretty together for over these years. When I came home for Passover one year from college, there was a young woman across the street with a 3-year-old daughter who we didn't know was going to become either my mother's younger sister or our oldest sister. It was a little unclear for a while. But Judy became our older sister. So Jeff had an older sibling, but not one of the 3 brothers. And then there is, and I'm glad to see there was a picture out front of Jeff from a year ago. I think it's Jeff and me, and with Spongy. And this is a picture of Spongy, our bear. Sponge, formerly Sponge Rubber Marker. I don't think we ever knew who his creators were, so there's no Ben who in his name. But Spongy is very, very important to the family. And then, of course, David is, however you look at it, youngest or younger, and all. So that's the siblings are the 5 of us. I think I share with Jeff a reluctance to throw anything away. So if you're wondering what is with that tie he's wearing, I believe this was cut at both my mother's and my father's funeral. And yes, I found it on my rack yesterday and whatever, and we just cut it again. And this button was on the tie from which one of those funerals, I don't know right now. But so and that's not the only thing reluctant to throw away. But also in terms of Jeff, I do want to, by talking about sartorialness, if that's the word. Yesterday I wore the True Our Resisting Tyrants Since Pharaoh t-shirt that Jeff gave me. And now Jeff liked Charlie King. And I have a couple of t-shirts that he gave me, and I'm wearing our work is more than our job, our life is more than our work, quote from Charlie King. And a theme is the balance between your work, but also trying to enjoy life. And that's I'm glad to know that when I'm gone is going to be an important part of the service, because that, as I recall, I read that to my father. I think I read to my father before he died. I don't know whether I said, this is in preparation for your funeral. I don't think I said that. But whatever. And it became for me, as a humanist, reconstructionist, classical reconstructionist, Jew, and whatever, lots of Kaddish, lots of praise God doesn't work very well for me. But the tradition of doing and stuff, it does. So for both my parents, pretty much every day, I would say Kaddish, but pair it with when I'm gone. And that became very important to Jeff. But we had a different view. And this is where I think to him, one of the rules that made sense to him, he wanted to follow. So When I'm Gone was a song, so he always wanted to sing it. I don't make any claims that I can sing. or whatever, and I think I read pretty well, so I read it when I do it. And so when we had the occasion to be together, I would start with reading it, but he'd always be nudging to try to make it turn into song. And then that would raise the kind of issue at the end, because when I read it, I don't repeat the first stanza. But when you sing it, you repeat the first stanza. So there's, and the essence of When I'm Gone is why you're here, doing both the good fight and enjoying life. And so that, I think we got that from our parents. It's good. David talked about baseball. And yes, in my basement, I think somewhere, when I retire, I'm going to go through all these things in the basement. Of course, I retired 5 years ago and I haven't, but I went through our father's papers. That's a big mistake. I did get that. Sorry, Nan, someday. Nan's my wife, who unfortunately, because of illness, could not be here today, but there's the films downstairs. So yes, in 55, my understanding is it's when they won the pennant, not when they won the series. The whole town was down in the courthouse square, and the team is up above. And our mother's father, my grandfather Abrams, had been, I don't know if he was at that time, but had been president of East Midwood Jewish congregation. Not a small little place. And indeed, sometime the last couple of years, I think Jeff was going through papers that he came across a newsletter from East Midwood from somewhere in the 40s, and there's the column showing who's president and officers and stuff. So Grandpa's name is on there. But there's also an article by a teenager by the name of Ruth Bader. I think she got a third name and did something in life later on. So Grandpa had connections. And somehow his two grandsons, I would have at that time been 4 years old, but I was already wider this way than this way, up on the courthouse square. And there's a couple minutes of film of that. And we got a baseball, we each had a baseball signed. And I've got pictures to put out there later, the various ones. We each got a baseball signed by a number of the players, and owned by Jeffrey and Billy Marker. I was Bill, as a kid I was Billy, and later on became Bill, and got into that with an aunt once, but anyhow. And I believe the story is Jeff took his, he would have already been in school, took his to show and tell, and it got lost. But I still have mine. And yes, once at least I asked the insurance company, should I get that separately insured? Because on this ball, there's 6 names. One is, I think I only know because of being on the ball. That's Hardy Labor. I did not think to bring it, but yesterday I called Nan, and Nan sent me pictures. I think it's Joe Blanco was a pitcher, was the team. What? Breaker? Okay, thank you. But the more minor names, I think, are Duke Snyder and Pee Wee Reese are the more minor names, because above the owned by, that's Roy Campanella. And there was in 1955, I think at that time, if you signed somebody, it was a big bonus. They had to stay on the bench if they didn't play. So Sandy Koufax, I think he became important a few years later when they moved to Los Angeles. There, and Jackie Robinson. So I could Pee Wee Reese and Duke Snyder are the more minor signers. So that's a connection there. And in fact, we ate last night at Junior's, as David and I did at Junior's, under all the Baltimore pardon, sorry. The Dodgers paraphernalia was very appropriate. So I assume, I have a phrase I use, I assume Jeff agrees with both parts, but certainly the first part, that any day the Yankees or the Cowboys lose is a good day, and everything. So some years ago, I was walking through Fells Point neighborhood in Baltimore, and there was a festival, and somebody had T-shirts, I think $5. Orioles orange T-shirt, black letters, orange. I love New York. It's the Yankees. And so I bought one, and I bought one for Jeff. I think you referenced his stubbornness to do whatever he thought was right. I think he once wore it to Shea Stadium or Yankee Stadium. And even he, I think, decided not to do that again. Apparently it was not super friendly, love your neighbor's response. I've talked about when I'm gone. There's so many things to come. And you want this last year, Jeff, no, I assume kind of knowing his thing, he did a lot of connective travel and pushing to do. And last March, he came down and I have a small house in the Pigtown part of Baltimore. My wife is proudly the vegetarian Jew of Pigtown. It felt hard, and the guest room was, he could not have reached and stuff. So clear choice staying at David's house. But we got together a couple times. I think it was maybe the only time the three of us went to our parents' graves in Montgomery County and down near Washington. Have I not been being close enough? Have I been? I'm sorry. I now hear it better. So he came down and we went to a kosher steakhouse in Pikesville, the Baltimore area. And there's a picture out there showing Jeff and Spongy together there. There is a picture. There's another picture there showing the two boys, the two of them holding me up from that same series of pictures. I think that same day, which is that was the third party in conjunction with Jeff and Paula's wedding. There was the wedding. There was a party in a park. And then there was something at the house for people who didn't qualify for either two. And oh, by the way, Bill, since you just graduated law school, you could have a few friends come to that. But that's where we took a picture, I think, of David wearing a hat that had Spongy on the hat. And so in 1984, I gave David a poster with Big Brother is watching, because he had his bigger brother, Spongy, watching him on his head.
Okay.
Same series of pictures, yeah. One that's out there. But the travels, so he came down in March, and we know it was in March because and I'm not going to talk Baltimore bagels, I'm not in Brooklyn, but there is a bagel shop that made bagels with Maryland colors for Maryland Day. And that was within a day or two, and I brought him some of them so we know it was last March. But he also visited New England during the last year and saw several New England cousins from the Moselle side. And that helped. The connection was bringing in the Grateful Dead song today. In November, right, the Jewish Men's Retreat had long been important to Jeff. And I didn't think it was my thing and whatever, but and this year it was in Baltimore instead of up in Connecticut. So the three of us went to the Jewish Men's Retreat in November. God knows, I don't know if we'd ever been slept in the same room together, because when we were kids, David had his own room, being much younger. But for the three of us to be in the same room for 2 days and talking and sharing and doing the things was just a wonderful experience. And we got yesterday, the day before, a very nice note from the leadership of the Men's Retreat as another one of these places where Jeff was a revered senior rabbinical source and for consultations and whatever. So he traveled there, and then I saw him again in early December at the J Street conference in Washington. He made it down. He literally fell in the hallway at one point because he was having trouble with his legs, but he was there. And he made it. And then, of course, in January, that he got out for the renewal gathering in Colorado. And some of you may be there. And the Rabbi and Cantor from my congregation were there, and those travels. So So I'm sure there's many more things I'm going to say I wish I had said, but I want to finish with, on behalf of myself and David, and Spongy, and I'm sure I could say on behalf of Judy, and Judy's daughter will be with us this afternoon. We want to express our gratitude to Paula. For caring for Jeff and loving Jeff these years. His life was so much fuller thanks to you, and you know you're appreciated and loved.
It's my honor to invite forward Rabbi Lev Merowitz Nelson.
Going around?
Yeah. No, I had.
One, two, three. So we've heard, I'm the rabbi part-time at the Flatbush Jewish Center, where Jeff was an increasingly important member over the last few years. We've heard a little bit about his sense of humor already, and I just want to dive a little bit into that and how it manifested for Jeff. Because it wasn't just being funny and irreverent for him. I think Jeff's irreverent humor was also deeply, deeply reverent. The way he played with language, with Judaism, with Torah, was the kind of the joking, the kind of kidding you do with someone you've spent your whole life with and you love deeply, like a sibling or a best friend. I'll give you one example that's become increasingly important, especially in the last few weeks, as Jeff's been absent from our community. Shabbat morning Kiddush after services. Right, someone already knows where I'm going with this. You all know, right? So there's a kind of pause in the middle of Kiddush where the person making Kiddush takes a breath. So you finish all the people in your community, your kids, your servants, your animals should be able to rest. And the next line is Lama, why? It was Jeff's interjection every time, and then the leader goes on, for in 6 days God created the heaven and earth, etc. But it's the kind of joke that you make when you love Hebrew and you love Shabbat and you love God. So I wanted to bring that here today, and as we're about to sing Psalm 23, Mizmor David, I was looking back at the text, trying to kind of channel Jeff a little bit and read the text through his kind of lens. So there's one line in particular, Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai. God sets a table for me in the presence of my enemies. And I was thinking, how would Jeff translate this line? And I think it's, God puts out a nice spread. So Jeff, wherever you are now, I hope there's a nice spread, and I hope there's good company to share it with. Please join me in singing Psalm 23. Oh, never mind. Judy's going to sing Mizmor David. Go right ahead.
Please join me. Mizmor David, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, v'nei odeshet yarbitzeni, el mei menuchot yenaleini. Nafshi yeshovet, nafshi yeshovet, Yamcheni b'maglei tzedek l'man shemo. Gam ki elech begeitz al mavet lo hirara ki ata Shiftecha u'mishantecha hema yenachamuni hoitaro lefanai shulchan taroch lefanai shulchan taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai dishanta v'shemen roshi dishanta v'shemen roshi dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya Achto v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai Vishavti beveit Adonai Vishavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim ay 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 ay
Slow down, Jeff said to me. I just finished davening and I'd gone through the Mornik's Kaddish too fast for him. Slow down. I said, Jeff, we're at a Shavuos retreat. It's like a blinking red warning sign for normal people, like everybody here is the Jewiest of the Jew. He said, even so, just slow down. Thought about that after Jeff died. Chernobyl Rebbe teaches that the root of mitzvah, the word commandment, is not, in fact, the Hebrew tzaveh, which means to command, but rather tzavta, which means to join, to attach, to bind. We're going to miss Jeff. We're going to miss the way that he sort of so effortlessly attached himself to us. Paula, my heart goes out to you, and to all the family as well. We're going to miss the way that his soul was expansive and always somehow or another joined with you. May his memory be for a blessing. God, full of compassion, dwells on high. Grant perfect rest under the wings of your presence amongst the height of the holy and the pure, who shine like the stars in the sky, to the soul of Harav Yaakov Yisrael Mordechai ben Yosef Echana, who is gone to his eternal rest. May his rest be in Gan Eden. Please, Master of compassion, hide him under your wings forever. Bind him up in the bond of eternal life. You are his portion. May he rest in peace in his place. We say, Amen.
El Malei Rachamim שוכן במרומים, אמצי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת הרב יעקב ישראל מרדכי בן יוסף וחנה שהלך לעולמו, בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
I am Rabbi Miriam Grossman, and you just heard the beautiful voice of Cantor Lisa B. Siegel. And together we are clergy at one of, as was said, one of Paula's many Jewish communities, which we are grateful for. Paula, our hearts are with you so deeply. We honor the grief you're holding right now, and we honor the home that you built together and the love that was at your table and in your space and your learning. Our hearts are with your entire family. From the intimacy of family to the legacy of justice and peacemaking, the vibrancy of Jewish community and beyond, all of which we've begun to hear about and celebrate in this space, it is so obvious to me the ways his memory is already a blessing. May it only continue to be so. I once had the honor of sharing the bima with Rabbi Jeff Marker while officiating a funeral, and I'll say it was a very hard day. It was a deeply tragic loss, and he faced that day with grace and groundedness. He brought with him presence, and he did not hide his anger. And to me, as a young rabbi, that was a lesson that will live in me forever. To face loss with all that we feel and all that we are. On that day, he spoke about the ways we honor God and we honor life itself and we honor each other when we choose to remember our loved ones despite how vulnerable or impossible that task may feel. May all of us here in this space, and I'm just noting the massive, tremendous turnout online as well, may all of us collectively in this space and beyond this space take up that hard work, that hard and holy work of affirming life even in the face of loss. And so we know today, as we'll soon move to the end of our service, that this is not the end or the culmination or the middle of sharing his story. It is a different, hard, and sacred kind of beginning. We're going to share now and read the following piece that was also handed out at the front door. In the colloque community, we often share these words after a loss. We call this David's Kaddish, written by Kolotnik David Hodgson. And these words are not a translation of the mourner's Kaddish, but they are an attempt to reach towards what it feels like to mourn, These words are written in the cadence of the mourner's Kaddish. And we know again that the Kaddish will come later. It will come after the burial, but we offer it, Paula, on your way. May it be a comfort and a balm. We'll say these words together. And so it is, and so it goes. We hear and see and feel and taste. And we come and we go, and we leave behind and gone the life of here, wishing hope for all Israel and all the world that we cannot know. And we say, Amen. And as we stand together, we derive peace from pain to remember every life. We here affirm the grace of love, the hope of living, the gulf of loss, the fear of losing the missing ones, remembered all, holding us. And each name we say tears a hole and mends the same, and tears, it mends and closes and opens us, as we are and as we are not. So we are here and know that this moment of all moments together shared is our time of hope, our time of peace, hoping as we hold on to this passing that some one of us will hold on to us when our name is said. And all this peace will also be for you and for me. And we say, Amen. Amen.
So in just a moment, we'll close this service. But before doing that, let me share with you that Jeff's family will escort him to Baltimore, where he will be buried in a family plot in Bethel Memorial Park at 3:30 or so p.m. Shiva will be held in both Brooklyn and Maryland. Brooklyn will be at Paula and Jeff's home, 229 East 4th Street, Thursday, 7 to 9 p.m. with a PSJC style minyan towards the beginning of that time. Saturday, 6:45 to 9 p.m. with Havdalah led by Kolot Chayenu, and Sunday, 2 to 5 p.m. The Maryland Shiva will begin at Bill and Nan's home, 744 McHenry Street in Baltimore. That'll be Thursday from 7 to 8:30 p.m. with services at 7:30. And then Saturday at David and Mary's home, 7131 Willowbrook Way in Columbia, Maryland. Also, did I get it wrong? Sorry, 744. What? 774 McHenry Street. So just, check in with them and you'll get the address when you get to Baltimore. Sorry. Okay. And then the other one at David and Mary's home from 7 to 8:30 p.m. with services at 7:30 p.m. If you'd like to make a donation in Jeff's memory, there are so many places you could give, but the family was asking that you consider the New Israel Fund, Trua, or the Park Slope Jewish Center. And I do want to encourage you, please join Shiva, because there are so many stories yet to be told, and we want to make a space for those stories. We could stay all night. We know we do have, that's why we set limits to the time. But I hope those stories continue in person, via the internet, whatever way you have via notes. Just bring those stories forward, because that's how we confirm, we make sure that Jeff's remarkable life, that his soul continues to really be bound up in the bonds of life as we live out the messages that we learn from his story. Jeff died on Sunday evening. What I believe on the set was his 75th birthday, according to the Hebrew calendar. He was in this world for 3/4 of a century. And in those years, Jeff used every minute, learning and teaching and pushing for goodness, for justice, and for peace, using humor and particularly kindness and compassion to bring some light and some joy into an all too often dark world. And so it's appropriate that we close this funeral with the Marker family tradition, sing Jeff's version of the Marker family tradition, the one I know at PSJC, singing When I'm Gone by Byfield Oaks. The sheet is available for those in the room. The words are in the chat for those on Zoom. And I don't know if y'all have the tradition, but I feel like we should stand as we sing this, because we can bring our full selves to this space. Oh, good. And then we'll go back.
There's no place in this world where I belong when I'm gone, and I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. You won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. I won't feel the flowing of the time when I'm gone. All the pleasures of love will not be mine when I'm gone. My pen won't pour a lyric line when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. I won't breathe the bracing air when I'm gone, and I can't even worry about my cares when I'm gone. Won't be asked to do my share when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. I won't be running from the rain when I'm gone, and I can't even suffer from the pain when I'm gone. Can't say who's to praise and who's to blame when I'm gone, but I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. Won't see the golden of the sun when I'm gone, and the evenings and the mornings will be one when I'm gone. Can't be singing louder than the guns when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. All my days won't be dances of delight when I'm gone, and the sands will be shifting from my side when I'm gone. Can't add my name into the fight when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. I won't be laughing at the lies when I'm gone. I can't question how or when or why when I'm gone. Can't live proud enough to die when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. There's no place in the world where I'll belong when I'm gone. I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. You won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here.
Let's remain standing as we bring Jeff's casket forward. If those who helped us bring it in can help with the escorting, and we'll allow, to allow Paula and David and Bill and Nan a chance to walk out. If we can stay in our seats, and as Jeff's casket is escorted out. we allow his family a chance to go as well. So we're just gonna, if we can just stay in here for a couple of moments as we let them bring the casket down the stairs. And then I hope you'll be able to join us join Paula here in Brooklyn at Shiva, any of those nights, any of those days, to reach out and to help all of Jeff's family know that even as mourning is such a personal loss, that they are indeed not alone. So thank you.